Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or where you consume your podcasts, or this one in particular. We hope you're well, our wonderful audience. It is us, the Media Beat with Maureen and Claire, episode 97 with a packed show. The deep dive is about consumption of news, actually. No coincidental. There's actually some preparation behind all this. We've got stuff about Ofcom making the rules a bit stricter for certain content providers. James Murdoch has had his checkbook out, if checkbooks are still used, and OpenAI and Gemini, they're fighting. Podmojis, we're going to talk about Palme, we're going to talk about UMG, and we're going to talk about SNL UK. But we start, as always, a deep dive, and it's one of the more legendary doubleheader deep dives that have become so popular in the Media Beat sphere. So we're going to see Claire and Maureen do their thing. We're going to start with Claire, but it's all about news, commentary, our evolving consumption habits. But generally, it's about how it's changed from a man in a dinner suit reading to us about what has happened with Her Majesty and the government to a much more sophisticated way that we are delivered and we receive news. But enough of that. Claire, maybe you'd like to explain with a bit more professionalism and knowledge what we're talking about here.
Am I allowed to gently chuckle at your pronunciation of Palme because you do make fun of the way I pronounce certain words? So I'm going to give myself permission to do that.
Palme d'Or.
Palme d'Or.
It's not a door. It's of gold. Sorry.
Palme d'Or.
Anyway,
I mean, this is the one thing where I have some real expertise pronouncing French awards names.
Very good at French. Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about the what's happening in the world of news, and then Maureen will do a deep dive on one of the major new players that has arrived. And the way I'd like to frame this, because we all like a good title, is from newsroom to newsletter. I think we've used this quote before in the podcast. It's attributed to Jim Sparksdale, who was the former CEO of Netscape. And he says that there are only two ways to make money in business, bundling and unbundling. And we talk a lot about bundling in TV and streaming, especially. We've had a lot of unbundling in TV and streaming. Everybody got out of all those big overpriced cable packages. And now we're back into bundling, rebundling, etc. And we've discussed this. But in news and commentary, we're in a completely different phase of that cycle. It's unbundling rapidly. So we're very much in the unbundling phase, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So traditionally, if you think about, and I'm talking about the printed press here, if we can still say this, Oliver. So traditionally, commentary around news and current affairs was bundled into newspapers, into magazines, and to some extent as well into TV shows. And it is still true, and there are still some very big brands like the Financial Times and the Economist, which remain powerful symbols of this bundled quality. But what we're seeing more and more, and what I think is very interesting, is commentators unbundling themselves. And one of the, I think, most famous examples is probably Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart unbundling themselves into the rest is politics rather than becoming, columnists in a national newspaper. Paul Krugman is another one who became, really famous on Substack and much more on Substack later. These people are building what we call creator brands, and they're monetizing directly, and they've cut out the institution in the middle, the newspaper, the magazine, the whatever it was. Now, this is because, very much like television, there's been a structural shift in this industry that's really changed the economics of it completely. So for most of the history of the press, the barrier to entry for publishing was enormous. You had to have printing presses, you had to have a distribution network, you had to have an advertising sales team, and you had to have, for all of this, capital. And that really kept that bundle intact, because if you're a writer, you didn't really have a choice. You had to work with the institutions that own the infrastructure. Now, the internet started to dismantle that in the early days, but really it was the smartphone, the apps, the newsletter especially, that finished the job. So the marginal cost of distribution of your thoughts has basically fallen to zero. So we are happening, so that unbundling of commentary is happening very, very fast, and much faster than, for instance, local television, which still requires boots on the ground and people who can roam the streets and interview people. But the technology is not the only driver. There's also something happening in the industry that means that it's almost impossible today to make a living the old way if you're a journalist. US newspaper employment has fallen by 30,000 people between 2008 and today. In the UK, regional daily print sales fell 18% in just the first half of 2025. In the wider media industry, we lost 17,000 jobs just in 2025, and 2026 looks like it's going to be worse. We've already had the Washington Post, Fox, and the Wall Street Journal making cuts in the first 2 months of the year. And of course, AI is coming in. And what AI is doing, it's not replacing the big names, but it is filling in for like the structured, mundane task, which you would normally give a trainee journalist. And so it means that the bottom rungs of the ladder are disappearing much faster than the rest. And also, the unbundling is happening because newspapers are under enormous financial pressure, are really increasingly reluctant to invest in long, expensive journalism because that's usually less popular with readers and less popular with advertisers than, what I would like to call clickbait. And so why would they do it at a point where they are under such financial strain? Now, that some of the newspapers are fighting back by forming alliances. There's a very good example, which is the ICIJ, International Consortium of Investigative Journalism, which is it's got about 50 or 30, I think 30 outlets across 55 countries. It's won a Pulitzer Prize for their Panama Papers investigation in 2016. And actually, not only a Pulitzer Prize, 3 world leaders resigned following that paper. So that's the sort of institutional journalism that still has an impact. But I would say they're the exception and not the rule. And so what's happening is journalists are going at it alone. And the one platform that's emerging as the winner in this world is Substack. And now Maureen's going to go into much more detail about Substack and what it's trying to achieve. But let me give you some numbers. Writers collectively earn $450 million through Substack in 2025. There's about 100,000 publications that are now earning money on the platform. I think about 50 creators are earning more than $1 million a year through paid subscription alone. So, and remember, no staff, no sales team, no editor, just a writer and a direct relationship with readers. There are other platforms, Patreon is one, Ghost, Behave, but Substack has become the sort of brand name for this kind of publication. Now we know, because we've talked about it a lot in television, the catch in unbundling is always discovery. So I've talked about 100,000 people on Substack monetizing. There are over 2 million publications on Substack. So yes, you have a handful of large accounts at the top, people actually who often made their names in traditional journalism, though not always. And then you have a very, very, very long tail behind. And, again, remember, no staff, no sales team, no editor. This new world force writers to become the same as YouTubers and TikTokers. They have to be a one-person media company. And not all of them are enjoying it. Not all of them are good at it. I'm going to hand over to Maureen to talk more about Substack, but I wanted to also say that for me, there's another catch in the system, and I want to bring back one of my favorite movies of all time, All the President's Men. Have you all seen it? 1976. You had obviously Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman as Woodward and Burstyn, but I want to talk about Jason Roberts, who was playing the executive editor of the Washington Post, Ben Bradley. And the whole drama of the movie, if you remember it, it's not just the reporting. It's Ben Bradley saying, I want a second source. I'm not running this story unless I'm sure. It has to be watertight. I need to take institutional responsibility for this. And on Substack, there isn't that. The writer is the editor, the publisher, and the brand. And nobody's asking, are we sure about this? So I'm going to end here. I'm going to say I'm really happy that long-form journalism is not only surviving, but it's in some ways thriving on new platforms. But I am mourning the decline of the curator and executive editor role. But that's just possibly me being old and crunky. But I'm going to hand over to Maureen and see what she thinks.
I almost giggled then, old and cranky. I doubt that, Claire. So I've approached this slightly differently, but nonetheless, building on a lot of the opinions and statements you've made, and gosh, a lot of good statistics as well. So I think people have been framing this as newspapers on one side and then Substack on the other. Big institutions versus the individual writer. And as you've pointed out, you've got the big masthead of newspapers, and then you've got all of the journalists who've been fired or let go and have sort of walked out of the building. But what have they taken? They've taken the readers with them to some extent. Okay, so who is winning? You may ask. But I don't think that's the right kind of question and the right framing, just to simply say newspapers and then Substack. So I think because a format is never really the only point, and I think you've picked it up on this. You've picked up on this, Claire, where you talk specifically about the audience. So I think we know that a newspaper, a newsletter, a podcast, a YouTube channel, they're all just ways to reach audiences and to reach people. The valuable thing here, I think, is the relationship with the audience, the trust that's built up over many, many years between the journalist, the writer, the newspaper, and its readership. So do people come back? Do they pay? I mean, the numbers that you've thrown out are incredible. That I guess a top set of 50 creators are earning over $1 million. So they do receive money, and people do pay. Can you reach them directly? Absolutely. We're having that one-to-one conversation. And are they depending on the algorithm to send them your way? No, they're not anymore. So for a long time, newspapers did own the relationship. You subscribed, the paper landed on your mat, sometimes, or in your inbox mostly. And you read it every morning, and you continued to read stuff every morning. So that was the habit. And I think the internet did, as you say, it break that habit. The front page moved to the feed. Readers came through either Facebook, Google, Twitter, Apple News, wherever the traffic was coming from that day. And that made media companies, I think, much weaker than they actually looked, because I think they could have the millions and millions of visitors, but as soon as that algorithm changed, guess what? They disappeared. And that is where I think Substack is a bit misunderstood, because I think it's doing something extraordinarily clever. So we usually talk about Substack as a place where individual writers go to be independent. Well, that is true, but I think that's missing a bigger point here. Okay, so Substack gets the writers, and they also get the small media companies that come with it. The big newspapers used to have a collection, as you rightly said. They had the magazine, had the paper, the print, and they also had the sort of digital version. So I think the direct relationship with the audience is the critical way of thinking through what is it that makes Substack now special. Well, Substack has email addresses, it's got payments, it's got the podcasts, it's got the comments, it's got a community. And I think people who come back to the Substack and to the Substacks, they do it without asking permission from Facebook or Google. And I think that's really fascinating. And this is why I think, and we're going to talk about him again a bit later, that's why Scott Galloway and the Prof G team have come to Substack, and they've come recently. And I think that's an extraordinarily clever thing. So Galloway didn't come to Substack to discover an audience. It already had the audience. It had the podcasts, it had the books, it had the video presence, and it had a business. And I think he had the whole Prof G machine, and that's what he's taken to Substack. And I think that move matters considerably more, and why the environment that Substack is building is so critical. And it does definitely, it's a place for solo writers. I'm one of them. But it's also becoming a home for media brands that want closer connection to their audiences. And that's what newspaper used to do. They used to, so let's bring that back to newspapers. So the problem was for newspapers that they were losing a direct relationship with readers because of the intermediaries that were Facebook, Apple News, and Google, and the algorithms. Okay, so the same person might read the newsletter now. They may listen to the podcast. They may watch the clip. They may come to the live show. Prof G is all over the US. He's coming to the UK as well. So that's where one audience can move across the different formats. So I think the masthead that we spoke about in terms of print, is much simpler. Individuals, businesses, are within the ecosystem that is Substack. And I think that's where they're making the money. So it's not individuals, it is businesses that are being created and recreated in a Substack environment. I think that's where I rest my case in terms of the newspaper versus the Substack. I think it's all about the direct relationships with their readers and a different formats, which is effectively what we used to all call distribution. That's my case, Claire, but I was staggered by some of the numbers that you threw out there. $450 million. Wow.
Yes, and one of the top writer on Substack who is, I think, is a lady called Heather Cox Richardson, who publishes Letters from an American. She has 2.5 million subscribers. Some estimates put her revenue above $1 million a month. So I think you should keep going with your Substack, Maureen, because I think that's the price. That's what you're going for. It's all in there to play for.
Yeah, exactly. It's all to play for. Yeah.
Oh, it gets plopped into my inbox every. Do you do it regularly? Do you Substack regularly? Is that another thing? Like you've got to sort of podcast regularly to get an audience. Do you find yourself?
I do a couple of pieces a week, and I also do my Forbes. I'm a Forbes contributor. I've got exclusivity for a number of days and time period with Forbes, and then they drop into Substack. So I manage that little mini ecosystem, which includes this as well.
Press and Substack.
I've got podcast. I've got Forbes digital, and I've got Substack digital as well. So I'm building. I'm getting there. Scott Galloway, Heather, watch your back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your media empire is shaping up. I love it. Excellent.
Drag us along with you, please.
Yeah, please. Absolutely. We want to ride the coattails.
Claire has a fabulous presence as well. So me not so much, but I'm happy in my humility. That was great. Thank you. Yes. What a fascinating thing. It's so complicated now. Where do you get your news? Where do you get your commentary? Can you believe in it? People these days now have to be really up on what's real and what isn't. However, the richness and the tailorability is probably worth it. I got something dropped into my feed, which is a gentleman reading a poem, which I've never understood poetry. So it's really helpful, for example, to have him explain to me why this poem's interesting and useful, the story behind it. And I'm getting myself educated. Thank you so much. Do subscribe. Maureen is far too shy to ask you to do that, but subscribe to her Substack. It's as eloquent as you might imagine if you're used to it from the podcast. But that was a deep dive, classic. We now move on to, ironically, in the news. And we start with Claire in her newsperson's overcoat. And it's a Murdoch story. And she's got her hand up and waving.
Yeah, that's Maureen.
That's Maureen, yes.
What did I say, Claire?
You did.
Did I?
We do have video.
Yeah,
we do have video now, so it should
it's
be
Maureen. But
it is.
She should take the lead on that story. It's her story.
No, absolutely, it's Maureen. I could have sworn I said Maureen, but then again, I am on quite strong medication. So Maureen.
Have you still not recovered? Oh.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I am fine.
Are you okay?
No,
I'm
super fine. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all the floods of inquiries into our LinkedIn about whether I was okay.
Yes,
and you need
zero. Yeah. But I'm fine. So yes, I'm sorry, Maureen. Anyway,
okay.
Maureen, it is you, and you are there, and it's a buy story. James Murdoch has bought I thought it said James Murdoch has bought New York, but it's a magazine. So it's New York Magazine as opposed to the New Yorker, I guess, and Vox as well. Tell us all about that story, Maureen.
That's great that you've made that clear for our audience. So it's
value add.
All right. So the Murdoch deal. So James Murdoch has got his own company called Looper Systems. That's his holding company, and he has agreed to buy New York Magazine as opposed to the city or the state. Also Vox.com as opposed to Fox. So Vox and the Vox media podcast network as well. So what he leaves behind, though, is a few sort of businesses and magazines. So he leaves behind The Verge, if indeed your readers out there, Eater, SB Nation, and a few others that stay behind in a separate company. But the family story is what everyone sort of leads with as soon as they hear the name James Murdoch buy something. And I'm not doing that, and Claire and I are not doing that, and we are not going to talk about that or make that connection whatsoever, i.e. the son who broke from his father's empire, or the son who is buying the magazine that his dad once owned. We're not going to lead with that story because everyone else does. That's a really good yarn. It's not the interesting bit. So the interesting bit is, what did he actually buy? So not just a magazine, not just a website. He bought audiences, which is exactly what we were talking about earlier. New York Magazine brings more than 400,000 paying subscribers. New York Magazine it's an excellent, very strong culture brand, a very serious service journalism business. Vox.com, or Vox itself, brings a YouTube channel with nearly 13 million subscribers and an audience that comes for plain English takes on politics, technology, and the news. And the podcast network brings nearly 50 shows with real host power. We're not in there yet, but you never know, including Pivot, of course, my favourite, or our favourite, maybe I can say that, Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. And Pivot is actually, exactly the kind of asset that the whole conversation is about. So it has a loyal audience. It's built around, as we know, personalities. It moves across podcasting, newsletters, live events, and video and subscriptions. So put that next to what Looper system already has. It's got Tribeca Film Festival and it's got Art Basel. So the pattern's becoming quite clear now. So Murdoch is buying brands that gather people around culture, ideas, and live experience. And he's buying. We're not going to mention the valuation because I don't think that's actually been corroborated, and we are fine podcasters that we need primary sources, but he has bought in a soft market. And the one valuation we can allude to is the fact that digital media prices now fallen quite hard and quite fallen down as well. BuzzFeed has just sold a majority stake to Byron Allen's family for only 120 million. That's a fraction of what it was worth some time ago. So Murdoch isn't just buying digital media assets at a discount. He's buying media brands with audiences that would choose to come back time and time again. I think this is one of the smartest deals I've seen in a long time around digital media. Claire?
I think it's very interesting because I think what James Murdoch is saying is we've reached the bottom of the unbundling well, and now it's time to start bundling again. And so I think it's a very neat follow through to, we've said we're in the full throes of unbundling, and at some point it's going to go too far, which it always does because that's the cycle. And James Murdoch is saying, I think actually right now, with the valuations where they are, it's time to start bundling again. Digital media, when we've been through, various rounds of unbundling. And he may be right. He certainly has picked very, as you said, very interesting brands. I'm actually personally a fan of Vulture, so I'm excited to see what he does with that. I'm glad that it's found a home these days. You're just relieved when your favorite places find a home. But it's true that according to what we've seen, it was a soft valuation, not dramatically soft, but not great. So yes, I think he's making the bet that right now, some of these brands and some of these creators are stronger together, and he's going to try and make that bet work. And it'll be really interesting to see whether he succeeds.
Yeah. So there we go. Again, do you think he's going to be as active as his dad?
Yes.
I think. Well, I don't know.
Like
I think he'll have a different angle to it. He's as you say, he's picking slightly different assets, and he has. But he's gonna want to be a player, and they have received, both him and the other siblings that aren't Lachlan, a pretty big check. So they have money to play with.
Yeah, okay, let's keep an eye on it. Thank you so much for that. And we move on to Ofcom. So Ofcom, right? So they, you'll explain what they are, Claire. It's a definite Claire story, this one.
Boring regulator story. Always Claire. Yeah. No, I'm joking. Ofcom is the regulator in the UK for television and communications, and they have published something that I find quite interesting, a draft code of practice for what they call tier 1 streaming services. And that means any platform with more than 500,000 UK users. And that basically means Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus. And they are trying to put these people under regulatory standards, because at the moment there aren't any regulatory standards for streamers. Not in the way that, if you see something on TV that you don't like, you can complain to Ofcom, and you get those news on the BBC, right? Ofcom has received a number of complaints about this or that episode. Well, you can't do that. If you don't like something that's on Netflix, there's nobody at the moment in the UK that you can complain to. So Ofcom's decided that this was a loophole that they needed filling. I agree. If anybody asks for my advice, the code will cover various things. It will cover protection of under 18, harm and offense, impartiality and accuracy in news, which is interesting, and protection against unfair treatment and privacy. And they have also put in some accessibility requirements, including subtitling, audio describing, and British Sign Language, with some quotas there as well. It will be interesting to see what happens. BBC iPlayer is going to stay under its existing code, which is the BBC code, although the accessibility requirement will apply to it as well. I think it levels the playing field for UK broadcasters, which I think is fair enough. I want to talk a little bit about France, because why not? I'm French. Very briefly, France has been regulating streamers from the beginning, but French rules went very far. They required streaming platforms to reinvest 20 to 25% of their domestic revenues, so revenues they make in France, back into French production. And they had lots of sub-quotas there: production, independent production, feature films, and the whole French windowing system. And France has been a champion of TV quotas for many years to protect their local productions. But in this case, it's been, a very successful move, and something that UK independent producers are looking with interest. Now, Ofcom is not going there at the moment, but it may at some point want to consider whether those quotas are justified. Although I guess the US streamers are already producing quite a lot in the UK, so it may not be necessary. Anyway, Maureen, what did you think?
I agree with you. I think sort of getting to this level playing field is a good one. So I'm all for those type of rules which are around, harm, accuracy, impartiality of news. I think where I would draw the line would be around content rules themselves, because most of these organisations are domiciled outside of the UK, but clearly, they're serving an audience that's inside the UK. I mean, I don't think Disney Plus is a Channel 4. I don't think Netflix is an ITV to some extent. I just think I wouldn't put in the same category like a drama box set is not the same as 6 o'clock news or something like that. So I think Ofcom needs to be aware of the limitations of enforcement and of the guardrails, because we don't want the UK to be, not competitive. I appreciate there needs to be guardrails. I really do. So, and I know that Ofcom can set the rules. It can investigate. It can fine. But it's how much by way of teeth does it really have in terms of enforceability and enforcement? So I think if the guidelines are clear, they're practical, and of course they're definitely overdue with respect to harm or impartiality and accuracy. I'm totally for that. I just wonder about if they get a little too carried away with respect to what the content is itself. I don't think they'll have the teeth to be able to do much there.
So I should have made clear it's a consultation at this stage, so we can all send our views. And certainly I would expect Amazon and Netflix to send their views, as will the BBC and Channel 4 and all the others, to be honest. And the final code, the final result will probably not arrive until the end of the year. But, I agree with you. I think in terms of just protection, it's needed. And the question is exactly how enforceable some things will be.
Great story, great summary. Keep an eye on it. Let's go. Thank you so much. And finally, yes. So that was boring regulation. Here's interesting, sexy AI. So over to Maureen. By the way,
Claire gets the sexy story.
Yeah,
I get the sexy story. I get there's a couple of. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I
There's
was just saying our focus on France is perfectly reasonable because we do have a listenership of 4.2%, which is our fifth highest nation listening in. So absolutely, definitely many French listeners. But yes, Maureen, AI, there's a scrap. We always like a scrap between OpenAI and Gemini. What is going on, Maureen?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a scrap, but can I before
Well,
I
I'm trying
go
to
on
get
to sort of the
listeners.
stories? Yeah, I
Clickbait.
know. There's a scrap. Okay,
Okay.
clickbait. But I have to say that can I go back to Ofcom? You get Claire talking about regulation, and she makes it so sexy and so interesting. And look, she always brings in something about France, French. So come on, yes, yeah.
I'm gonna. This will be on
Set
my
the bar
LinkedIn profile.
high.
She makes regulation sexy. I love
Exactly.
it. Oh, thank you, Maureen.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so there's a couple of stories, and we'll end off with sort of Tribeca as well, Tribeca Film Festival. So right, first is Apple is bringing, as we know this already, Google's Gemini into Siri. That's a really big deal because Siri is no longer now going to be seen as a side product. It sits on the iPhone. It's in people's pockets. If Apple gets this right, Gemini becomes the voice assistant for a huge number of everyday users, and it also tells us something about OpenAI. So ChatGPT clearly was the exciting name that Apple brought into the iPhone story very early on, but now it is going with Siri, and it's now working with Google. So Apple has gone definitely full hog with Google, but OpenAI is still important. Okay, so it's not the only game in town. OpenAI can actually be used elsewhere. But yep, okay, Apple's made its decision and Google it is. So the second move that I've seen and witnessing is that Microsoft, we remember that Microsoft is a significant investor in OpenAI. They are loosening, and this operative word is they're loosening their partnership. They've still stuck a whole significant billions and billions and billions of dollars into OpenAI, but they're simplifying their relationship. And for years, I think that's really sort of changed, and it's evolving. So Microsoft does have this special relationship with OpenAI, and I think it's more Microsoft's cloud, but Microsoft has now got to give, as let's say, the shine from, I don't know, it's given up. Maybe it's not given up. It's sort of, it's less sexy now just to have OpenAI's models in its ecosystem. So now that grip between the two is definitely loosening. OpenAI can work with anyone else. It is free now to work with other cloud companies, including Amazon and Google. So, as I say, although Microsoft still has a very strong connection and relationship as an investor with OpenAI, it no longer has the same lock on it. So plain English version, the AI companies want to be everywhere, but the big platforms like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they do not want to be stuck with only one AI partner. So everyone is just being let's say flirtatious and fickle, and they're working with every single person, every single company, any AI models, because I don't think anyone really knows where they would like to land. I know, Claire, you and I, and maybe Oliver, we use at least, I think, 4 or 5 different AI models. So I think enterprises are doing something similar. So that's like the big boys. Now, something which is quite close to our hearts is film and short films, and Tribeca Film Festival. We have been following Tribeca's festival for a number of years, and especially 2 or 3 years ago when Tribeca Film Festival opened up to do a deal with Sora, and some of their film directors was using Sora as an experiment, and then subsequently they started to work with Runway. So it is no surprise, although the market generally is surprised, that Jane Rosenthal, who is Tribeca's co-founder and also CEO, has now said on June 10th that she will showcase an AI feature film, which is a drama, AI generated. It's dramatizing the Iran war and the deaths in Iran. It is fully AI generated, no people, just a couple of brothers who are sitting in a room that produced this. So it has shook the industry to its core, even though, as we know, we've just come back from Cannes, that Demi Moore and her brigade have said, look, we've just got to face up to the fact that AI is going to be something, AI tools, something that we're going to use and continue to use. But this is an interesting one. It will be featured, as I say, on June 10th as the first live action AI fully 75-minute feature film. Claire, did your jaw drop when you heard this news, or were you kind of expecting this as most of us were?
I mean, I thought we were all expecting it, and we'll have to see. I mean, I guess my biggest fear is that it's good.
I've seen
I'm kind of hoping,
the trailer. It is good.
I'm
It is good. I
kind of
hope
hoping
it's
it doesn't quite work, because that sort of goes against everything I like in life. So anyway, we'll see. I think there's no doubt that there's a place for AI in filmmaking, and I think this is a typical example where you couldn't send crews to the ground, and it makes sense to try and recreate something. And it's obviously much more economically feasible to do it in AI. And as we all know, film financing is very difficult. So I completely get the logic, and I think you can tell wonderful stories, including with AI. But it makes me a little bit sad. That's my reaction to the story. Going back to AI briefly, to sort of Google and everything. I think the one thing I will point out from everything that you've said is Google. First of all, just that deal that Apple did with Google is worth about $1 billion a year. So it's a bit of cash going around. But Google is now everywhere, in terms of smartphones, which is one of the main uses. So it powers AI on iOS, on Android, on the Samsung Galaxy AI. So there is a sort of monopoly of thought forming, which is never good for anybody. So just putting it out there. Although ChatGPT will still be available on Apple, it's not going away completely. But certainly the dominance of Google, which was a late entrance into this world, is something worth keeping an eye on.
Yes, indeed. Will AI be good, but not that good? Artists must be looking at that very closely. But let's see what it's like. Thank you very much for that. Excellent stuff. That was In the News. And that was in the news the way we do it here on the Media Beat, in a unique-ish style. So we move on now, of course, to Podmojis. And I'm hoping for some props this week, because viewership on YouTube is going up, and they are complaining that we're not getting enough relevant props going on. So you speak, we listen. And at the moment we can see, what is that hideous thing? I'm not talking to the model. Something strange popped up in the screen there. Maybe more of that later. So let's start with the Neon, who have won the 7th Palme d'Or. And because of the French feel of that, they've won a branch of gold. Claire, what's your Podmoji on that? I suppose you're happy.
Neon is an independent film distributor, and they have won 7 Palme d'Or back to back, which my mother-in-law has just decided is a completely illogical English expression that she refuses to use, because it's obviously not back to back. I don't know. Anyways, so they have won. Their run started in 2019 with Parasite. They then won with Titan in 2021. There was no Palme d'Or in 2020. They won with Triangle of Sadness in 22, Anatomy of a Fall in 23, Anora in 24. It Was Just an Accident in 25, and Fjord this year in 26. So that's a pretty good run for a small independent studio. And I think it's interesting in some ways. It's definitely the anti-algorithm success. They go very niche. They sign on gut, on people, on creators that they believe. They don't look for stories that they think will work. And indeed, not all of these movies have been huge successes at the box office. Some of them have crossed over. Parasite has done quite well at the box office, and Anora has done okay, but most of them have remained very small. And there's something to be said about whether the Palme d'Or and Cannes in general is becoming very, very detached, even more so than the other awards, from what people actually watch in television. So it's also, I think, interesting in terms of legacy Hollywood studios who used to win the Palme d'Or and who have been nowhere to be seen for the last 7 years. It's also interesting because a lot of these weren't in English originally. Some of them were, but a lot of them weren't. So it speaks to our increasing comfort with subtitles. And when I say our, I mean yours, because, we in other non-English speaking country knew them before that. Anyway, I don't really know how I feel about this, because also I'm not sure. I think cinema is at its best when it crosses over between art and popular culture. And these movies are very arty movies. And I'm not sure that's always the good thing for Cannes. So I'm going to go with my little gummy boy, and he's going to be like, I don't know. He's shrugging. He's doing a Gallic shrug. I think that counts. I feel like that's a good one.
Totally
All right.
That's a fabulous start.
What did you think, Maureen?
Yeah, I probably, my reaction is, I mean, I love every single one of those films. So personally, anecdotally, I love them, and I can't wait to watch Fjord. So I think I would love to be in the room with all of those other distributors, and they just walk out slightly more annoyed, and yet slightly more impressed every single year, slightly more annoyed and slightly more impressed. I think, how do they bloody do this? So I think it's great. I think it's lovely. Lucky number 7. Wonder whether they'll hit their lucky number 8 in Asia. So I love their films. So I think they should just carry on, and let's just see where it goes. I hope they don't detach it. It's something special about that award. I hope they don't turn it off. That's for sure. Is it likely
could
to
I
turn
trouble
it
you
off?
for a?
Oh yeah. Can I do the more authentic Gaelic
another
shrug?
Gaelic? Oh, I like that. The Gaelic shrug.
Shrug.
That's very nice. That's very nice.
Is that right? I don't know. Hang on.
Oh, come on. That's unfair.
Yeah, it's a shrug, but the Gaelic shrug is the old Gaelic. We were talking off air about how everyone hates the English, and that's another reason the Gaelic corporation. Right, let's and a good reason as well. So let's carry on. That's good. So UMG, they've rejected a bid, presumably to be bought. Maureen, start with you on that one.
All right, this is a quick one to gloat. So for Claire and I, to gloat more than anything. So if you listen to a couple of our episodes earlier on, where Bill Ackman put forward a takeover bid, basically via Pershing Square Capital, we said at the time when we saw the news, we were reacting to the news, and we said, there's no way this is going to be accepted. There isn't a buyer here because there isn't a seller here. UMG is not up for sale. So you could throw out as many of these blank checks as you like. UMG is not for sale. And guess what? The board has rejected the bid. So mine is a go back into your little hole. And homage to Claire's jumping car last week. Yes.
Oh yes, a classic moment, which we should definitely put in our awards show reel. Exactly. All right. I have. Oh, can you see it? Sorry, there's a lot of sun. No, you can't see it. It's a cat.
No, we can see roughly.
That looks like a walk.
Slightly overexposed.
It's a cat.
And it's bouncing.
It bounces again.
Persian cat.
Never walk.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Persian.
Yeah.
Persian
cat. It's a Persian cat. And he is, exactly. And he's saying, yep. He's licking his paws and going, you tried. But I think, I will say it's interesting. Cyril Bolloré, who is the son of Vincent Bolloré and is on the board, was basically said no and told the board, I am strongly against this and don't do it. And the board followed his lead. And, I think, as you were saying, nobody really wanted to sell it. So it was a bit of a Anyway, so we were right.
Hooray.
Is the conclusion, says the cat.
And was that in our predictions?
Yes.
No, because that
wasn't predictions.
Anyway.
No, it was a reaction to the news. No, it was a reaction to a news event.
It still counts. It still counts. It's an absolute
It still
win.
counts.
It still counts. We've got one in the bag. We've got one in the bag already.
Nice one. And it's only June. That's it's still pretty good. No, well done. Congratulations. Very proud. And finally, oh yes, so we'll start with Claire. SNL UK renewed for a second season. What great news!
Yes, it is really good news, I think. I think it's a good program that's done really well for Sky. The numbers, when you dig into it, are slightly a bit the shades of grey. So, the series premieres drew 226,000 viewers and 3.2% audience share. That's for Sky One. That's enormous. That's 4 times the audience for a typical, showing that slot. And it beat Channel 4, which is not very frequent for Sky One. So they did very well. And obviously there was a lot of catch up, and it rose to 500,000 viewers once you do the 7 days consolidated. But it did sort of steeply decline after that. And, it went all the way down to 86,000 later on. But what it did do was generate 86 million views across social. So I think for Sky, the way they see it, that Sky used SNL UK primary as a marketing vehicle to engage with a new audience. And by that measure, the social numbers for them, they will be very, very happy about this. And so they've decided to renew it for 12 episodes. So it'll be interesting to see whether it manages to pick up on the ratings in season 2. I think it's good news that they've renewed it. I think it's a great showcase for young talent. I need a Podmoji, don't I? Okay, I'm keeping the look. This is a giraffe, and she's very happy, and she's jumping because all of my.
It's a well-known metaphor for young comedic talent. Is the old jumping giraffe
They
metaphor.
are a giraffe. They're picking.
We are at the end of the bottom of the barrels here, I think, at the moment.
I'm running out of props.
It won't influence the scores, Maureen.
I don't know what you're talking about. A giraffe. It's not at the bottom of anything. It's got a very tall neck.
A very tall neck. She's out. Yeah, exactly.
So one thing Rowan Atkinson came on the scene, they said, that is a jumping giraffe.
Yeah.
Sorry, Maureen, carry on.
Yeah. So I was just saying, the one number that I keep hearing about, and I don't know, Claire, if you can corroborate this, is it true that each episode costs roughly £2 million? And of course, if that is the case, that's a very expensive unscripted show for Sky and generally. So I'm going to reserve the right to say I don't agree with that. I saw it somewhere, but I don't think it can't be that much money per episode. But you never know. But that is what I'm sorry. I was shocked by that, but it's true. That's the estimated.
I mean, just as a comparison, the US one is $4 million per episode. So that's enormous. The reason it's so expensive, by the way, is because it's got a. Yeah, well, it's not only the talent, because talent is, it's 11-member main cast, which is a lot of people, and a writer's room of 20 people. And they also have a live crew, a full house band, and obviously a senior producing team. And they have to turn this around very, very quickly because it's sort of, it's very topical. And so they do need to turn it around in 24 hours. Yeah. But that's very high. That sort of slot. A typical UK sketch show. Yeah.
It's a highest.
And that's sort of a higher. Yeah, it's higher. It's high-end British dramas. It's actually more expensive than most high-end British dramas produced for television.
And I also picked up that sort of, plenty of people were saying that they didn't think this particular format would travel. But if you go back to the US, all the guys there are saying, including Monsieur Michaels as well, that this show keeps getting better and better every week. So the renewal suggests clearly that something's working, and it is working, otherwise it would not have got a second season. So it is interesting. The doubters are, though, quietly staying at home, given that now that the season's been renewed. Yeah.
And I think if you count it as a marketing expense to attract younger viewers to Sky and to their streaming services and their channel and their advertisers, it's a big bet, but you can see why they might want to go there. Yeah, but yes, that's a big number.
Podmoji is
And
a
I think the format really does
Christmas
travel.
tree.
Oh, there's a Christmas tree, of course.
Christmas
Yes,
tree.
perfect.
Just
because it's a
like-
present. It's a present under the
Exactly.
tree, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense to
exactly.
me. It makes sense to me,
Claire,
Maureen.
Claire gets
Absolutely.
it. Claire gets it. Claire gets it.
Yeah, I'm scoring it though, and I scored a draw. Draw this week. Some interesting, slightly hallucinatory, if that's the word,
Well, I have a
hallucinatory.
few more props. I'm going to keep them for next week.
Keep your powder dry. Yes.
Yeah.
So some stretch metaphors, but some nice visuals and excellent bouncing. So we can't complain. Which brings us to the end of episode 97, I have to say. We've all squeezed it all in. Yeah, I love SNL UK. I think it's really fun. It is getting better. And it has the excitement and vibrancy and sort of zeitgeist of the American version, which I think is very clever that they managed to do that. Anyway, who cares what I think? We will see you next time, but it is time to say goodbye. And I will start as usual with Claire and say goodbye.
Goodbye, Oliver. Goodbye, Maureen. Goodbye, everyone.
And Maureen, same question. No, same thing. Goodbye to you.
Goodbye to you, Oliver, Claire, and everyone else. Goodbye.
And I will also say the same until the next time. Bye-bye.